Welcome to Buckets. The NBA season is 1 week away as we record this on Tuesday. It is time for NBA Future Best Bets. We're going to get you the best bets from our team of Sean Little and Jay Money. You're going to see them a lot this season together. I am nicknaming this show Cash Only because, well, that's all they get is cash. Just only cash all the time. All the time. That's what Jay and Sean are good at. We're going to get that. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. We're going to go through those today. Everything that we talk about can be found in the award-winning Action Network app. You can track your future plays. You can track Brandon Anderson's. He's doing one future for every team, and Jim Turvey's doing one future for every team on Friday's episode. So I hope you guys have like a long drive, or you're going to the DMV and they don't have that system for you to just come in automatically, or you're going to be stuck somewhere like in an elevator for many hours because you're going to have a lot of things to make money on Friday's episode. Make sure to tune in for that. We'll have more best bets from our crew tomorrow as well, but let's get to it with cash only. We're going to start with Jay Money. Jay, you are not a big futures bettor, but I want to give you a chance to get in on this. I want to ask you, what is your best play on a future for this NBA season?
Yeah, I like the Charlotte Hornets to make the play-in tournament. Obviously with the well, I'll explain it later, right? Just tell them to pick right now. So
now we'll go ahead and go. Let's go ahead and get into it. So you like the Hornets to make the play-in tournament? I think that's a pretty good. It's a smart bet. I was actually just on a call with a bunch of our Action folks, and it's really fascinating because we have folks with a lot of different approaches here. Brandon Anderson's on the Hornets. Brian Fonseca's on the Hornets. And you're on the Hornets. And those are three very different perspectives and successful perspectives to betting. Give me your reasoning why you like the Charlotte Hornets to beat expectations to be a play-in team.
Well, first off, we need a LaMelo Ball to play the full season. I mean, I know it's just preseason, but he looked really great. We know that they kind of melded in last season. His ankle was kind of hurt or whatever, and they kind of just meld things in. But if he's playing, this is a superstar player in today's NBA. I mean, he has the shooting, he has the playmaking. He can get into the paint. He can really change a game. He's really like that good, in my opinion, to change a game. Could possibly be a walking triple-double this season as well, man. So, or especially double-double with those assists. But they have a new coach as well. He's preaching defense. The Hornets have always had the offense. They just need to play a little bit of defense. So I've loved what I've seen from this guy. He's a high intensity guy. He's a younger dude as well. And the players have really bought into playing defense. And like I say, with them playing that fast, frenetic pace, putting up some threes, they have some good pieces over there as well. So as long as they come to play defensively, the offense is there. And I really like the direction that the coach is taking this new team. And like I say, LaMelo Ball is really the head of the train over there. As long as he can stay healthy, this team could really possibly even sneak in and get the last official playoff spot. For them to make the top 10 in the East, I definitely think they can do it. I'm expecting a huge bump and surge in the Hornets play this year. So I love this spot for them to make the play in at plus 140. And obviously we see some other teams dropping down as well, like the Bulls as well. Lonzo's back, but I'm not worried about Lonzo Ball over there. But yeah, I don't think the Bulls. I think they'll probably slide down. The Hawks, you never know what could happen with them as well. One Trae Young injury away for them dropping out of their play-in tournament as well, man. So I really think that the Hornets can sneak in and get that 9th or 10th spot there in the play-in tournament.
I've been down this team the last couple of years. Last year I went and bet the over because everyone was like, this number is stupid. They're going to be way better than this. And then I felt dumb because I got bullied into overs. And I was like, I thought this team sucked. Why didn't I listen to myself? This team is different. And the Charles Lee factor, I think, is huge. So if you're not familiar with Charles Lee, if you're listening to this and you don't know him, Charles got his start coaching back in 2015 with the Hawks. If you remember, that team was goddamn good. They shared the ball, read offense under Budenholzer. He followed Bud to Milwaukee and joined him there. He was under Bud from 2015 all the way to 2022. And then he became an associate head coach of the Bucks in 2023. They obviously moved on last year. And then he went to Boston. He got hired by Boston. Lee is interviewed for multiple head coaching jobs along the way. But like, look at the formula here of the teams that he's played for. Hawks, Kyle Korver, bombing threes. The Bucks revolutionized that team under Bud by basically being like, hey, let's actually have spacing and let's shoot a lot of threes with Middleton around Giannis. And then he goes to Boston, again, one of the highest three-point shooting teams that we've ever seen. So, like, this team is going to bomb from deep. And that's going to help their offensive identity because when LaMelo's on the floor, the offense has been good the last couple of years. You're right on the defense. I'm worried just because they have so many young guys trying to defend. But if you look at like the top 6 guys, it's all pretty good. By the way, Trey Mann having a sensational preseason, like an absolutely just phenomenal preseason. And so I think there's just like a lot of upside here. Like I'm getting talked into it. Sean, what do you think about the Hornets to make the play-in?
I think you laid out a couple different things, you and J Matt. Number one, identity. If they're going to have a clear identity, that's number one, because that's not something they've had over the last couple of years. And one thing I will take with young guys trying to play D is they're going to actually try. And defense is 60% just actually going out there and actually wanting to lock in and play on that side. Now, for Jay on the play-in, plus 140 is a great number for the Hornets. I think when you're looking at futures for the play-in slots, start doing a little elimination game. Sit down and write out teams that you know have nowhere, are not going to be anywhere close to being in that 7, 8, 9 range, right? So clearly we can talk about the Knicks, you can talk about Philly, talk about Boston. There's really only typically 4 teams that are going to be in that real mix. Now, we talk about Atlanta, they could take a step back. A lot of different people feel differently about the Miami Heat. We won't dive into that, but they're going to be right around that number, right? So you're really only competing with 2 or 3 teams on the Charlotte Hornets to get in that play. And if you feel better about them than, say, the Toronto Raptors right around that same number, then it looks like that's where the Charlotte Hornets are going to be. So you could do yourself a service by, you don't really have to handicap the entire East. Pick out a couple teams that you think the Charlotte Hornets will outperform, and that's where you could land in a spot if you like them to make the play-in or not. But at plus 140 with a guy like LaMelo Ball pulling the strings, new coach, new culture, I think that's a good spot.
You know, we talk about this, and we've talked about it before, but I do think like that's a really great point to kind of emphasize, is that you have multiple outs with this bet. If the Hornets are good, you're likely to get here. If the Hornets are bad, they might still get here anyway because the other teams are worse. So,
exactly.
Not having to worry about the make playoffs bet and not having to worry about them being a 9 seed or a 10 seed, who no 10 seed has ever made the playoffs in the whopping 3 years of the play-in tournament. Like, not having to worry about that bet and just being like, hey, I am targeting, 7 through 10. It's 4 spots. That seems very narrow, right? Based off of like variance and how these things can go. But when we establish the floors, if we talk about like, the 6th seed in the East probably isn't going to win fewer than 45 games. And the Hornets probably aren't going to win going to win 45 games or more. Okay. Then you go to the other end and it's like, hey, you just got to get past 15, 14, 13, 12, and 11.
Right.
And we have so many bad teams. Like truly, I watched Wizards Nets last night because I'm a sicko. And I will tell you, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got a lot of opportunities here. I love this play. I think this is actually, I've got Brian Fonseca is going to probably give his out tomorrow. So I'll save his. Like Brandon's on much more, like Brandon does what Brandon does, which is always like play the escalators on him. I like this specific spot here a lot. I think it's a great cap by J Money. All right, Sean, throw me a best bet and we'll go through a couple of yours.
Yeah, I missed the totals. So I got a couple totals for you guys. That's considered a future in my book. Number one, the Orlando Magic over 47.5. Get the best number you can. I've seen it as high as plus 114 as we record this on Tuesday. So I'm not sure the public are aware of how many dogs are on the Magic. I just don't think people understand how tough they are going to be on a possession-to-possession basis, so especially on the defensive end. They add KCP, plays D, adds shooting to a squad that desperately needs it, has the championship pedigree. You could go through all the narratives with that, but I think KCP is a phenomenal addition for them. Jalen Suggs, we've talked about it off air, J Money. Matt, I know you're high on this guy as well. When we're talking about a face-up on-ball defender, he's top 3 in the NBA, an absolute nightmare when it comes to that spot. Jonathan Isaac, about as versatile as you can get. Mo Wagner, look, bro, I used to hate on Mo Wagner. I was a number 1 Mo Wagner hater. When we talk about going back to the Lakers and throughout his career, tougher than you think, impacts when he's on the floor, and he feels very comfortable with his brother around. I think that has been the ascension point for him. He's with his brother. I believe they live together. He is very comfortable having that backing, and he's a lot tougher in impacts more than people realize. And then look, man, it's time to pay the piper. Franz Wagner, you want the big bag? Well, let's see what you're going to add offensively, because it looks like he's going to be the guy, and he was that guy for them last year, where offensively, whatever we need, you have to do it. You have to create. Sometimes you're going to have to score. That's just how it's going to be, because we're thin on that side. And then when you talk about a pure bucket getter in Paolo Banchero, this team has everything, in my opinion, to compete in the East and win a lot of ball games. I see these guys as the baby Timberwolves. And then when we talk about the division, it's soft. -150 to win the Southeast. And it might be ultra soft depending on how you feel about the Miami Heat, Atlanta, the Hornets, the Wizards. We just talked about the Hornets. That might be the little bit of comp. But I think that's a really good matchup for Orlando when they get in and play the Hornets. That's just a team that young, they're going to defensively, they would have some success against them. So I think overall, they're in a really good spot on the division. The East is super top heavy now. They might be able to beat up on those guys in the middle of the season. And they are in that trajectory of the multiple years in a row of taking the regular season extremely seriously. Mm-hmm. They're just starting to come into ascension. I like the Orlando Magic this year. I think you can get print that ticket out at +114, depending on where you get it, at over 47.5 wins for the Orlando Magic.
Yeah, last season, Magic were 28-7 versus teams under 500. So, like, their win profile is really good if you want to build a regular season record up. They had a top 5 defense last season. They beat up on the bad teams. They beat up on the division. And that got them up to 47 wins. So I get it. Look, I don't want to over-index on preseason. I don't want to do it. It's preseason. It's messy. It's ugly. They have played starters, and they still have the 3rd worst offense of any team in preseason. The problem here is not that it's bad; it's that I don't see them better. Like, you really, if you have a Magic ticket for division or whatever, what you really want to see is like, oh, okay, so like they'll be like a normal offense this year. They won't just be like absolutely like throwing lead balls at a wall, right? And you just haven't seen that yet. Now they can get there. There's a lot of ways that they can get there. I didn't love the WCJ extension. And the reason I didn't love it is it makes him trade ineligible. And the problem with that is, like, look, you have Goga and you have Isaac and you have Wagner. You have options. You can get through. Like, you have an opportunity to have cheap centers with different options that you can plug and play with and not feel like you have to start one of them. And you could have traded WCJ. Like, the trade that I loved in theory was trading him to the Pelicans for CJ McCollum, who they want to move. Mm-hmm. You could have gotten, like, that gets CJ off of the Pelicans books, which they want. It gets you a microwave scorer off the bench who can actually, like, run the offense. You can play more offensive lineups if you need to. It covers for Suggs if he goes out. Like, there's lots of options there. I love that deal. I don't know why I'm talking about this because it can't happen now. But that move just kind of concerns me is, like, I don't know. With them locking in the money that they did, you can't move Franz. You can't move Paolo. That's your core. Right? You can't move KCP. You just spent all this money on him. And you're committed to Suggs long-term. And you just gave all the centers money. So the question now is just like, all right, if you're going to get better, how are you going to get better? If you're in December and this offense sucks again and your defense isn't as good as last year, what does that look like? And, like, that's kind of my concern, on top of the fact that top 5 defenses, I've been doing a lot of research on this. Since 2011, not including 2020 because of COVID. Top 5 defenses. The average defensive finish for those teams the year after is 11. Now, that doesn't mean that, like, the majority of those finish outside the top 10. But it does mean that defense isn't as sticky as we see. And if this goes from a top 3 defense to, like, hey, still really good, 7th or 8th, and that offense is still shit, even with this division, you're going to be in real trouble. That's my pushback on that bet, Sean.
James, ahead, jump in.
I'm saying though, but I'm over here too, man. No, I'm messing with y'all, but I like the Magic. I like that they play defense. Matt nailed it right there. And that would have made a lot of sense for both teams. Pelicans need bigs. I mean, you can't be running Herb Jones or Zion Williamson at the 5. That's not going to get you really a lot too far. But that's a whole different conversation. But the Magic, and this is something that Banchero said himself, they still don't have a playmaker. I get it. Getting KCP, they need outside shooting. They need championship pedigree. They need an older veteran on the team. You need a point guard. Jalen Suggs is not a point guard. He can play point. He's a really great defensive guy. He's a shooting guard. You know what I mean? So they don't even really have a backup point guard. This team needs playmakers. They have the defense. They can take them there. I don't understand extending Wendell Carter Jr. I'm right there with you, Matt. You have enough size. They should have went out and got 2 point guards. This team literally needs 2 playmakers, 1 starter, 1 coming off the bench. That's my problem with the Magic. I have them as the 7th, 8th best team in the East. They had a really great year last year, but now people know, like, they took teams of surprise last year, took them by surprise. Now teams know what they want to do, and that's why their offense is really struggling, Matt. You need playmakers. Look at the Suns last year, and then look at what the all-season moves that they went and did. Like, imagine if Tyus Jones had went to the Magic or something like that. This Magic team needs a point guard. That's what will take them to the next level.
Did they take people off guard, or did they just bully folks every single night? I think people knew they were coming and how they were going to play, and they just defensively cared more and bullied people. But, I mean, it's hard to argue the playmaker stance. But I think they're looking at Franz to pick up a lot of that slack for that big bread.
I will say that I've done the numbers. If you believe that they're going to be a top 5 defense again, which I think is probably, like, Sean, it's correct to say that's part of your argument here, right?
Yeah,
like,
no doubt.
They got dogs. They're going to be top 5. Top 5 defenses in that season are 70% to the over. Like, if you feel like a team is going to be a top 5 defense, you should bet they're over. Like, you should go through and make sure that because, like, for me, I'm like, okay, Thunder, Celtics, Wolves, Magic, Cavaliers, Grizzlies. I can't really parse out who's going to wind up where. I think Boston's probably got the best chance just because their switching defense is such a pain and they're so precise. Wolves is so dependent on Rudy, so that kind of, like, gets in there. But if you're just like, look, I don't really care about the other teams. I'm not as sold in. I believe my confidence is most high that the Magic are going to be a top 5 defense. Then you should bet the over. Like, that alone is a reason, because even though we can talk about the offense struggling and how that's a matchup problem, if you have a good defense, like, as this is part of Sean's cap, you're still going to kill those bad teams. Like, you will win most of those matchups because most of those teams just can't beat a good defense. Mm-hmm. Even if it might be close, but most of those teams can't beat a good defense. All right, Sean, what's your next bet?
One more. Let's go Celtics under 58.5. I'm not buying the motivation factor in the Celtics being angry because Jaylen Brown got left off the Olympic team and Tatum didn't play. I don't know. I've been parsing myself and going through this. I'm not sure where the motivation for this team to win 59 games in the regular season is going to come from, especially when we know Kristaps is not starting the year and, God forbid, there's an injury to one of the big boys. I just can't get to this 59 number. Now, remember, since Brad Stevens left, it's been 3 straight seasons of full throttle. We have something to prove, Boston Celtics. I think that angle is gone. 59 wins, you need that angle. Now, when it comes to the NBA Finals and title favorites, over the years, they've been overvalued. I tweeted this out. Top 5 teams favored to win the finals are 24-7, 68% to the under in wins since 2018. 7 straight profitable years. 2018, they were 4-1 to the under. 2019, 4-1. 2020, 4-1. 2021 through 2024, every year they were 3-2. So profitable. If you go back 13 years, top 5 favorites are 43-22 to the under. 2016 and 2017 being the only non-profitable years. So if you just closed your eyes every year and looked at the top 5 favorites and wins and bet unders, you'd be very profitable throughout the last almost 14 or 15 years. So prior to Boston, and also this is an interesting note I saw reading some John Hollinger. He said prior to Boston winning 64 games last year and winning the title, we had 6 straight years of NBA champions not winning 60 games. I just have a hard time figuring out where they come into the year motivated to win 59. That's Joe Mazzulla's job, to get them up and rolling for the regular season. We could start the season and they could be 22-2 and I'll look like an idiot. That's very possible, right? But overall, I have trouble finding the motivation for these guys coming off the title. Finally, a lot of the chirping is off their back. No Porzingis to start. Better overall East when it comes to competition for the games that they get up for. Because remember, what do we say, Jay Money, every single night when we hop on buckets? When the Celtics are playing bottom feeders in their own, they don't care about those games. They were winning those games just off pure skill. That's why they had trouble covering those numbers. Now, they showed up for the big boys when we were talking about the Knicks and we're talking about other teams in the West. But now that those, I think, top-heavy games are going to be a little tougher, these W's, I think, are going to be a little harder to come by than they were last year for the Boston Celtics. I got to fade them and go under 58.5.
I will say their ATS performance versus those bad teams makes sense because they're so overinflated because they have to be.
Sure.
If we look at the record, the Celtics were 30-3 last season versus teams below 500. They lost 3 times all season to teams under 500. 30 wins against them. My favorite stat from them is they had 42 wins of double digits. They won more than half their games by double digits. I took them in the over in the win total draft. The reason I like I'm not betting them. I took them in the win total draft because of where I was in the draft. But this was a no play for me exactly because of what Sean kind of talked about. And I'm glad that Sean did it because I wanted someone to kind of have not just the stones, but just take this angle, which is this is a betting angle. Okay. The basketball side is going to be they should win 55 games. They should win a minimum 55 games. They have the best team in the league. They have so much redundancy and versatility on their roster. They're awesome. History just says no. History just says absolutely not. Teams who won 60 or 10-4 to the under the following season, 7 straight, it's gone under. Teams that were top 5 in both offense and defense, though, with 60-plus wins, 4-2 to the over. That's the counter here, Sean, is this works when you're not if you win a bunch of games with an elite offense or an elite defense and your other one is pretty good. But when you are literally top 5 in both categories, those teams tend to go over the next season. But look, all these numbers, I'm always talking about them. Win totals of 55 plus, 19-10 to the under. Teams that went 60 plus with a win total of 50 plus, 5-3 to the under. Every single number is going to lead you to look. It doesn't really matter the basketball side. This is just too many wins. It's just too many. And taking the time, like you mentioned, those top 3 is a very good stat. The top 3 is a really good, those numbers are rock solid on just take the top 3 win totals and bet the under, which is why I'm super excited that I have both the Thunder over and the Celtics over in my draft because I'm a moron. Jay, what do you think about the Celtics and them? You were very high on them last year where you're I think everybody's overthinking it. Are they? I'm really curious as to your answer, Jay. Do you think they're going to be as hungry as they were last year?
When the playoffs start, because we know once you win that championship, like Sean said, that monkey's off your back. Now they finally got their first championship. You're parading the trophy around to your high school, to your college, all off season. I mean, they just had a couple games in Dubai, so which they're still working hard. That's one thing I could say about Joe Mazzulla. The only thing that scares me, he's a really great motivator, and he kind of really never lets the team let up. You see, so even a preseason game, they said all starters, they're up by 30 versus the Raptors, easily, even with the backup team going up against the Raptors starters, even though they had some guys out. So Mazzulla's a really great motivator. The guy is really like a lunatic. He was really a big reason why I thought that the Celtics were going to just hammer everybody last year. So for the regular season, I could really see them taking their foot off their gas because you know what it takes now. You don't need to come into the season going balls to the wall. It matters what you do towards the playoffs, and in the playoffs, they could win 50 games. If you're peaking at the right time in the playoffs, that's the only thing that matters. So I do think mentally they know what it takes to get there, and they know that they don't need to. Obviously it'd be nice to get the number 1 seed, but I think some other teams are going to be taking the regular season a lot more serious. And the main thing with me, I feel like after you win that championship, you know what it takes to get there, and you know that you don't need to win 60 games to win the championship. So I like that under there by Sean for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of said this a couple places. I think the basketball side really makes you think that it's going to be an over. I think the motivation and the number side makes you think it's going to be an under. I think one of the reasons that I'm not as convinced on the motivation thing is this has been one of the things I've been really impressed with is the last 3 seasons, honestly. Udoka, Mazzulla. They are the most consistent team night to night in the NBA, where until it was March and they had locked up the 1 seed and they're doing stuff like losing to the Hawks and giving up the blown lead to the Cavaliers and those kind of things. When they were actually like playing for something night to night, they were one of the few teams you could count on. Like they just had very few nights where like every NBA team has so many nights during a season where it's, yeah, we just didn't have it. The really teams that are in a bad place are the ones that where it's like, yeah, I just didn't have it again for like the 20th time. The Celtics almost never were there. And they just play very hard every single night. And I get from your perspective of, yeah, because they were chasing the title. They won it. My only thing is like this falls into catch a falling knife. And I try really hard not to do that, where it's like, if you show me cracks, like let's put it this way. If we get through the first 2 months of the season and their record is really good, but there are more nights where I'm like, they didn't play well. Like they just didn't have it. Then I'll be more interested in like a live under opportunity. Based off of that, but as of right now, I'm too scared from the basketball side to get into it.
Matt, I just want to say one quick thing. The thing that's so good about taking unders, one injury to, I mean, we don't hope anyone gets injured, but it is basketball. One injury to one of their top players, like even Porzingis not playing to start the season. That's the thing about unders. You have a lot more ceiling, in my opinion, to cash that bet as far as opposed to overs.
Oh, and by the way, you could get the 1 seed by winning 56 games. We don't have to win 65 to get the 1 in the East, right? So I think there's just a lot of different things, in my opinion, where they don't have to be pushing for back-to-back 60-plus win seasons, knowing how much of a grind this improved East is going to be.
Yep, I agree with that. By the way, unders are all total since 2011, 189, 168, and 1. So there's a definite edge, much like in NFL, and just taking unders. Like it's just like I've done all the research on it. I'm just telling you, like unders are better. Okay, I've got one to give out just because we have a few minutes here. I'm actually taking the Minnesota Timberwolves over 51.5. So my numbers are kind of spit this out as like a very good opportunity and one of the bigger edges. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want that. That's a lot for me to get in on. And right now I currently have them projected, because I bumped them up and I'll say why. I have them projected at 57.7 wins. That was actually more in line with where they should have been last season. They won fewer games than they should have last season. Those numbers don't always regress, but they also, it's not a strong enough play to be like, oh, they're definitely going to peel back. Conley's 37, Gobert's 32, right? So those injuries are like that age concerns are significant. I'm not betting heavy on this, because if Gobert just gets hurt for 2 months, then yeah, I'm probably losing this bet. Like that's just a thing that's going to happen. But Gobert is pretty consistent. He does play through a lot of injuries. He'll play through minor stuff, and he's still in pretty good shape. And when Gobert has anything resembling defense around him, he's a top 5 defense. We just talked about the Magic. Again, 70% to the over when you have a top 5 defense. The bigger thing for me, though, is watching them in preseason. It's not just that Knicks game and all the histrionics between Brunson's dad and DDV.
Is that what you're calling it, histrionics?
It seems real, but it's just like a lot of drama, right? I do think DDV fundamentally changes this. I covered Tim Conley rather in Denver for a long time. And I think that this trade was a lot more about Dante DiVincenzo. It was about salary first and foremost. And the Wolves got worse. And I get that you being like, so Matt, the Wolves got worse and you want to take an over 51. I get it. But I think this trade was about Dante DiVincenzo and seeing how he's playing and how motivated he is, and realizing that they love what he can do as an initial playmaker. Like they like the ball in his hands. The reason that really matters, if Conley, who I was worried about at age 37, needs to go out, part of my concern was I was like, man, they got rid of Jordan McLaughlin and Monte Morris, who are not great players, but they're veterans. Like it's Dilly after that. That concerns me. I don't want a rookie point guard starting for a team trying to win 52 games here on the number. But if it's like, oh, Conley's going to take the night off, so Dante DiVincenzo starting next to Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, I guess Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert, now I like that better. Jay shakes his head.
I just don't like Randle.
I know, me neither. That's another reason why I'm like, I don't know. But here's the thing. We know that multiple teams inquired about Randle. That's been widely reported and confirmed before the trade to the Timberwolves. I think if this doesn't work and Randle's not happy and the coaching staff's like, I need space. I can't do it with him on the floor. I do think that there's a pretty high probability that they'll move Randall, and then they might be able to get the additional trades. I don't like betting on trades that you're expecting. You should not do that. What I am saying is, like, I don't think they're stuck with Julius. I will say this, and then tomorrow they'll announce an extension for him, and I'll be like, but when I got Finch, who I think is so good, like, people were like, why are you trading for Rudy Gobert? You have Cat. What are you doing? 2 bigs? Are you a moron? Because they were like still stuck in the idea it was pace and space. We're no longer in that era. You do want size. Now, Randall's doesn't have great wingspan. Again, this is a downgrade. But I think the net impact combined with where I think the floor is for the Wolves, I'll go ahead and I'll take the over 51.5 on a small play. Jay, tell me why I'm wrong.
No, I mean, I like it. As long as you have Michael Jordan Jr. over there and Anthony Edwards, as long as he's healthy for his season, you're going to have – I mean, you have Jalen McDaniels. Absolute stop. McDaniels has to get better offensively, but, I mean, this team has all the tools to get right back to where they were in the Western Conference Finals, possibly even Finals. Like, this is a great Wolves team as long as they can stay healthy, as long as they can get Randall to buy in. They've saying that him and Anthony Edwards have getting along well. As long as they can get Julius Randall to buy in and be a team player, and I don't have to have the ball in my hands, score 20 points a night, as long as they can get some from him. But I'm a really great point with Dante DiVincenzo. He's a dog, could possibly be 6th man of the year, maybe even start to become a starter there as well, where you might even bring Conley off the bench. So I really like this Wolves team. And like I say, Anthony Edwards is one of those guys. He's one of those ones. So as long as he's healthy, they'll always have a chance.
Sean, your thoughts?
Yeah, only thing that makes me nervous about it is there is going to be some time that needs to be had for these guys to get together and actually play meaningful basketball. And that may cost you a couple W's that will clip you at the end of this bet, depending on how it shakes out. Look, I mean, I'm pretty close to the Julius Randle situation overall, just being in New York. And you don't know how to play with Julius Randle until you're on the floor playing with him, like in meaningful basketball. So I think there's just going to be a bigger learning curve there. Dante is extremely motivated from the as you could see, and from other people that I've talked to, that are around New York, he clearly is like, man, there's nothing more I could have done last year and I still got moved. So like, what the fuck do I have to do to be respected and want to, like, I should be, I think he was under the impression that he was unmovable. Like, I was that impactful for the team, and I can't believe I got moved. I was part of that core that was going to take the Knicks to win a title. Right or wrong, if you believe that DiVincenzo was that important, that's your opinion. But we'll find out how well that meshes. But I think early on, it's going to take some time for them to become real deal, and that could potentially cost some wins.
I always think it's great when the guys are like, you traded me? And it's like, you got Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah.
You traded me for Cat?
Randall is not that guy, man. He's not. Come on, man. That's hilarious to me.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for Buckets for today. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. Sean is on the Celtics under, and he's on the Orlando Magic over. J Money is on Hornets to make the play-in tournament. And you can find me on the Wolves over 51.5. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. Till then, let's get buckets.